This is a negotiation between agents for a community opera company and a singer. The opera's new production is due to open in 3 weeks, and the lead singer has suddenly withdrawn from the role. The opera has contacted Sally, a veteran soprano who has performed the role for the opera before, about taking it on.
Well, Doug, thanks very much for agreeing to see me. I know that Sally was very excited when she, read that there could be problems in casting the Norma role in the upcoming production. So I really appreciate your being willing to meet with me.
Well, and I appreciate your coming by to talk about it. You probably, actually, I don't know how much you know about the situation, and there's only a limited amount I can really say about it. But I guess you know that we are looking now for someone to fill the lead role this summer, and so certainly the artistic director, as you know, has worked with Sally in the past and really enjoys her. She's got a wonderful voice. He thinks very highly of her, and so I'm glad we're able to talk about potentially arranging something.
Well, that's good. No, well, Sally, enjoys working with the artistic director too, and I think you may know that she's performed Norma in the past with the company, and she'd be very excited about having a chance to do it again.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, what I guess since we haven't met before, and I guess you may not know, I'm relatively new to the company. I've only been here about 3 months, and I know a little bit about music and a little bit about opera, but you'll probably be educating me a little bit about some of the nuances, although I don't know how much relevance that will have to what we're trying to do here. I think my job is to let the artistic director do his job and make sure that there's money in the till to pay everybody at the end of the day.
Of course.
So I'd be very interested to hear what Sally is looking for in terms of compensation for potentially performing the role.
Right. Well, I think that one of the things that you may not be fully aware of yet is because of the newness of your position, but is that Norma is probably one of the more demanding roles in the entire operatic repertoire, and I think that lyric opera is probably in a very fortunate position that Sally happens to be available this summer to perform the role, which she's done before with the company, so she's familiar with the production and everything. So she's feeling that she should be paid, kind of the going rate for what you would pay for a leading soprano in this kind of production.
And I think that the company is certainly interested in compensating her fairly. It remains financially viable by the end of the summer. And one concern that's been raised is that while a few years ago when Sally performed the role, my understanding is that in the opera world she was relatively popular, maybe at the peak of her popularity and her vocal strength and abilities. And it's my understanding, I'm not sure I'd appreciate it myself, but it's my understanding from the people who know that she's not quite where she was a few years ago, and although it's valuable that she knows the role, there's a certain risk that's attached, at least in the view of some people, to hiring her for this role. And I'm trying to figure out, frankly, how to factor that into how we go about compensating her.
Well, I guess there's always a risk. I mean, opera is a live medium, a live performance medium, and that's part of the excitement of it, is that you get out there on the stage and things happen, and mostly to the good. And I think that's certainly been most experienced with Sally, is that she's always stepped up to the plate and done very well. My information is that the production starts in 3 weeks. Is that when it's scheduled to go on?
Something like that, right.
That it would be very difficult to find somebody who would be capable of performing that role credibly at all, never mind well, which I think Sally is still in a position to do. Also, you're right, she was in some ways at the peak of popularity a few years ago when she last performed Norma with this opera company, but she still has a lot of really loyal fans, who are in touch with her, and I think the company would see that in the box office results.
Maybe one thing that we could think about, and I wondered if this would be something that she might consider, would be some kind of compensation that protected the company against either a bad or let's say, an adverse review at the beginning. I mean, heaven knows what drives critics, and I guess what I'm wondering is whether we might think outside of the box, which is the box being typically, I think, a fixed rate for doing the 18 performances, and maybe think about a sliding scale of performance where there's a floor and a ceiling, if indeed she does have the following and not only produces the vocal quality, which we hope she can, but also the crowd to come see it, that she could benefit and the company would benefit too. Is that something that you'd potentially consider?
Yeah, no, that's definitely something worth considering. Another possibility along those lines, might be, might be a different level of compensation for these 18 performances of Norma, and in exchange a contract, say, for a lead in one of next year's productions. I guess one of the things I'd ask you to consider about this is that, yes, there's always the risk anytime any production goes on stage of bad reviews.
Sure.
And as you said, many of them are unjustified. You often wonder when you read them in the newspaper if you were at the same performance.
We had been talking about doing, before Sally's interest and availability emerged, was actually moving up one of the sopranos who's in one of the secondary roles to the lead role, which she actually knows pretty well. She's been working with the company. The artistic director knows her well. I will grant you that she doesn't have Sally's experience, but based on what the artistic director and other people in the company have seen, she's in a position to really step up to the plate. Now, again, I can't tell you whether at her age she would be able to do as good a job as Sally in terms of the range of maybe dramatic emotions that she's able to convey, but we do feel like we have a backstop. I think we'd like to bring Sally in if we can reach terms that make sense. I think the point you made earlier that I'd like to explore is the idea of what about next year, and that's an option that was also suggested to me as a possibility. Now, I think exactly what the terms of that would be would probably need to be discussed, and what was suggested to me as a potential possibility is that a place in some role next year, in addition to whatever compensation we work out, might be appropriate. I think one of the difficulties that was expressed was that we don't know where Sally's going to be in her career, vocally or popularity-wise next year, and that frankly we don't know, I don't think, what we're putting on next summer. My understanding is in the recent past she has performed some of the secondary roles with the company, that perhaps an option to do a secondary role might be of interest to her as well.
I think it would be probably doing a disservice to her for her to agree to anything, less than some kind of lead role for the next year. I guess, one other possibility is that you could sign her to cover a lead role. I don't think she'll agree to a secondary role, but that she would, which would mean that if she would rehearse for one of the leads, be prepared to do one of the leads in a production, and then if for some reason the lead that you had identified wasn't able to perform, you would pay Sally something to be available, obviously, and to be there, and she would step in, and the idea was, usually that isn't necessary, but that this would avoid the situation that you're in now with
She's the insurance policy.
That's right. She would be in the insurance policy.
So either we could put her in the lead role, or she'd be available to cover the lead role.
That's right. But a contract, in any case, tied to a lead role. Right.
And presumably that helps her then if she wants to negotiate with somebody else.
Exactly.
Now, does that mean she's committed to be available?
Yes, that means she's committed to be available. If she has the contract, she'll be there, prepared to do the role.
I'm wondering what sort of guarantee we have that she's in a position next year to perform in the same way she is this year. I mean, would this kind of agreement be subject to some sort of physical performance or review of her vocal skills in the spring?
I don't think that's rarely done. I mean, that's just the risk in dealing with, real human beings.
So I'd be looking at that. That would be my first entry into next year's budget, would be some fee for that. And I take it your view is that you'd be willing to be more flexible this year than, if there was some commitment, at least to cover next year.
That's right, definitely would be.
Well, what about an arrangement where, say, we paid her 25 this year and 5 for the cover next year? Is that something that would be acceptable?
Would you consider 10 for the cover role?
10?
Yeah, because if you think about it, she's going to be covering for a lead role, and maybe we could agree on a price per performance,
Price per performance.
Or I'm sorry.
I see.
Yeah.
So she'd be available. So she wouldn't necessarily have to perform every night.
That's right. If there was a cold and the lead couldn't do it 1 week, right? Or she might perform it every night if it was something more, appendicitis. Then the person's not going to be able to do the whole production.
So we'd work out some pro rata.
Right.
I see.
Up to perhaps the full fee that you would be paying the lead.
Depending on how many performances she did.
Right.
Right. Well, that's interesting. I guess that sounds very interesting to me. I guess if we worked out that, and this would sort of lock her into I think the advantage from her perspective, the problem is that 10 is just, 10 is almost what we're paying for a secondary role. I guess my view is this: if we paid her 25 this year, and then committed to 5 for next year to cover, and then looked at, usually we do 18 performances, 3 a week for 6 weeks. So if we divided, let's say the delta between 5 and let's assume we're paying the lead 25 next year, okay? So that works out to 25 divided by 18, whatever that is.
Right.
Okay, but let's say we paid her 5 and then 25 over 18 per performance in the event that she needs to cover. Because we'd have to pay somebody anyway to do that.
Right, exactly, to step in just like you're doing now. I appreciate the difficulty of your situation, I really do.
I guess my thought is this: I think what that locks me into is potentially a similar contract with whoever we were, whether we hired Sally or somebody else, with some sort of deduction if they are unable to perform the role. Now, I suspect I'd get a lot of resistance to that because my sense is that typically these are flat fee deals and you make the commitment. But look, they hired me to try and make this place, if not profitable, at least not a money-losing proposition, and to be able to do more with the resources we have. And maybe that means, everybody's going to have to be a little bit more flexible. Let me propose this. If she's willing to take 25 and 10, what about a situation in which she gets 25 and 5 guaranteed, and then if she performs, if she performs 2, she gets 3,000. If she performs 3 or more, she gets the entire 5 on top of the 5 for the cover.
Well, I have to say that doesn't seem like quite enough for doing all those performances. If you think of the opera, 3 hours. It's just a lot of work. And what if we made it 18 into $20,000? So she's already got 5 for having covered. And so therefore deduct that from the 25. We assume that you're paying the lead.
So the potential total for her is 25, you're saying?
Right. The 5,000 to cover plus a potential 20.
that's just, the thing I'm concerned about is committing the company to potentially, double the cost of having a lead role next year. I mean, if I've got to pay the lead and the same thing happens to me, I don't know how frequently this happens, but if the same thing happens to me next year as happened to me this year, that's the difference between us breaking even and being in the red.
Right. So that means you have to be really careful about who you hire for the lead. Do you think you could add, something about, actually promoting the fact, if she had to step in, that the opera company would be generous about its promotion about that?
That seems reasonable. I guess what kind of thing would she be looking for there? I think obviously they've got to do promotions anyway.
Right, in advance. But if she had to step into the role, this would probably obviously come up, probably at the last second. But do a press release and about how grateful that the company was that she was able to step in and save the production, something like that.
I mean, I'd be happy to push for that, because I think we're going to have to explain ourselves anyway if we're in that position.
Just to recap, I mean, my understanding is then that you would pay her $25 this year, and plus some positive spin that you would do anyway because of the other press that's already been out there. I won't characterize it. And then
and then five as cover for next year.
Right.
And the terms of the cover are that she would be available. She would make other commitments would be available to cover one or all of the performances. Now, going back to the concern I had about her ability to perform, I guess my concern is that if we've lost $5,000 if we need her and then she's unavailable.
Right.
And I guess my concern is that if we've laid that out entirely, then we've really lost. I mean, I guess what I would be more comfortable with is at least some clawback on the $5,000 if she's unable to perform at all. If we bought the insurance policy and it turns out the insurance company's bankrupt.
Right. That would be fine, because I just don't see that as being a likely possibility.
But say $2,500 if she's unable to make good.
That's fine.
And so let's call it a $2,500 clawback in the event. So then I paid $2,500 for an insurance policy, which is a pretty good policy.
Right.
It may not be.
Right.
It doesn't insure against everything, but that's. I think I can live with that. And then if for whatever reason the main lead isn't able to perform and she's not able to perform, there's probably going to be locusts and floods too. So
Exactly.
So that'll be the least I have to deal with. And then $1,000 for the first performance, and then 15 over 18 per performance thereafter.
Okay.
Is that it?
That's good. I think that's
so
very good.
So maybe we should get our lawyers to write this up.
Yeah, I think that'd be great. I think we should do that.
All
Great.
right.
It's great to talk with you. I hope it goes well.
Thanks a lot.